the message from last month, I don't know if anybody remembered me saying the term fruit after its kind. So today we're gonna talk a little bit, we're gonna go in some depth about fruit after its kind. And if y'all just allow me to read this, I say it doesn't take too much to realize that all of creation is hard-coded to live. That's a technology statement, meaning that creation, having been created, is programmed to live. This goes for everything. You can't find a thing that's alive whose intention is to do anything other than continue to live. I mean, everything wants to stay alive. Amen? Amen. And so even when you find sacrifice and beetles and bugs and fishes and whatever who do these things where they lose their life, it's almost always to prosper life to the next generation. And so in some sense, it's still about living. And we have to, today's message is going to really kind of dig into that and give us some insights so that we can use them practically in our daily walk and understand, how do I deal with this, or what's going on inside of me? Because, hang in there. Seen and unseen, I say. Seen and unseen. So, sometimes I like to do the have a little fun. It's like, well, what other titles could I use for this message? Rinse and repeat, cycles of life. Does anything change? And who's your Abi? Or Rabbi, or Rabio, whichever word you want to use there. And the reason I could have used any of those titles will become apparent as we go through it. So hang in there. So back in Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 1, we see that Elohim said, let the earth bring forth grass, the plant that yields seed, the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth. And it came to be so. And the earth brought forth grass, the plant that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was tov, or good. So we see at the very beginning, there seems to be this perpetual setup where there's a seed, and the seed is going to grow, and it's going to bring forth fruit after its kind, and that fruit is going to have a seed in it that's going to bring forth fruit after its kind. And we see this cycle of life, remember the previous slide, that's set up from the very get-go. But we're going to expand on that through this message and try to see, okay, what do I do with that? Because I could stop here, but I think I got more. So in Psalm 34, and these bold ones, I don't know if you can see them, Lamed, Mem, Nun, those are the Hebrew words that are like used as numbers for the verses. So in Lamed, it says, come, you children, listen to me. Let me teach you the fear of Yahuwah. I'm going to skip Mem. Who is the man who desires life, who loves many days in order to see good? Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. Or the King James Version says from speaking guile. And I'm going to throw some nuggets out while we're going through this. Because this underlying portion that says, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit or guile, it has to do with the theme of this message, which is the seed. I guess they call it spoilers when people, so your tongue is one of the ways that these seeds are dispersed. In Bereshit chapter 2, verse 24, Genesis 2:24, it says, for this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become what? One flesh. I asked the question at the top, for what cause? And the cause is to bring forth fruit after its kind again. You know, I know people get married because they, find a fine woman or a strapping, handsome man. I know they do that. But whether they realize it or not, the draw is programmed in so that they might bring forth fruit after its kind. I'm demonstrating from the scripture that this idea of bringing forth fruit after its kind is powerful. It is powerful. Hannah, remember Hannah in the book of Shemuel? She's married to Elkanah in the chapter 1, if people want to go look at it later. And she hasn't had any son or any children. And it's breaking her heart. And her rival, her husband happens to have another wife, but has many wives. I mean, many children, several children. And her rival is wearing her out about it. It's like, what good are you? What good are you? See, none of that would make any sense if it was just about, getting a nice, fine woman on your arm. It would be like, well, I'm finer than you, so what? He picked me, so what? But she was brokenhearted because she didn't have a good answer for what good are you? Because it was programmed in us to bring forth fruit after, and she's like, I can't. And this is breaking my heart. And this is the reason for marriage, to bring forth, I think Shaul says in 1 Corinthians 7, a set apart, a godly seed. Remember that statement? So he's tying back to this fundamental truth about existence, that the reason even for having this covenant of marriage is to bring forth a set apart seed. And so in 2 Kings, we see Elisha, and I kind of cut this out for the sake of brevity. So if anybody wants to, hey, I remember I told you this is interactive. So if anybody wants to go read the passages around this, raise your hand and we can go do it. All right, fair enough. Oh, so you want to go read them? If I got one, y'all better get them because we're going to be here a while. You know what? I don't even think what kind of teacher am I? I left my book upstairs. Could you get that for me, Darryl? So I'll read this while you do that. And Elisha saw it, and he cried out, my father, the chariot of Israel and his horsemen, and he saw him no more. Then he took hold of his garment and tore them into pieces. And he took up the mantle of Eliyahu, or Elijah, as it says in the King James Version, that had fallen from him, and went back and stood by the bank of the Jordan, or Jordan River. And so, if you don't remember this story, the sort of setup for the story, Elijah is the prophet in Israel, and there were prophets all over the place, but Elijah is the one that made it in the book because for whatever reason, the Most High needed to amplify that for us, and so Elijah had this disciple named Elisha. Again, newsflash, a discipling process that's bringing forth fruit after its kind. Because when you disciple, when you apprentice someone, you teach them what you know. You're replicating your knowledge and wisdom and understanding. You're causing them to be a version of what you know, right? In any aspect of life. It could be electricity. It could be, carpentry. It could be anything. So now you see how this thing expands a little bit. So you're basically giving them this seed in the hopes that it brings forth fruit after its kind. If I'm an awesome electrician, if I'm an awesome mason making brick stuff, then what my hope is that my apprentice becomes an awesome brick guy, right? Because I'm going to seed him with the knowledge that I have, and I'm going to watch over him and make sure that, no, you're putting too much mortar in there, man. When you're doing this uphill or downhill, you have to do it this way. I'm giving them all of these clues, and we need to understand that throughout life, we're participating in this, maybe unconsciously, but if I can help raise the level of consciousness, we're going to do better at it. So 2 Kings, chapter 2. Chapter 2. I'm going to back up from that ellipse, those dots. and I'm just going to read a little bit of what happened before that. And Elijah saw it. And verse number 12. So let's go back to 2 and 12. I gotta find where to go back to. You know, it's dangerous to send me back to the book because my family knows I don't like ands, because ands leave you hanging because you don't know what happened before that. And I'm thinking I gotta go back till there's no more ands, and I could end up back in Genesis if you don't watch me. There's a lot of them. It's a lot of them, ain't it? So I'm gonna pick the and that I'm gonna go from. So I already told you who Eliyahu or Elijah and Elisha are. So I'm gonna go to verse 8. And Eliyahu took his mantle and rolled it up and struck the water, and it was divided this way and that, so that the two of them passed over over on dry ground. And it came to be, when he had passed over, that Eliyahu said to Elisha, "Ask what I am to do for you before I'm taken away from you." And Elisha said, "Please, let a double portion of your ruach, or your spirit, be upon me." So what he was saying in effect was, give me the seed, bro. He was saying, hook me up so that I can walk in this walk that you're walking in even greater. This is what the double portion part is about. And he said, you made it hard to ask, yet if you see me when I'm taken from you, it is yours. But if not, it's not. So look what he did. So we're watching something on TV. You know what a marsupial is? Anybody? Everybody? Okay, marsupial, like a kangaroo. And the way that the kangaroo, all right, this is a quick biology lesson. So all mammals incubate their offspring inside of them. And then the baby is delivered. Well, marsupials are mammals, but they deliver what's like an embryo, and it crawls up into a sac, and then it gestates in there. So it's actually outside of the womb that it grows. And it's just a little embryo. It's got no hair, it's not a little bitty thing. And so in my mind, what just happened here is that Elisha just says to Eliyahu, he said, hey, if you just give me this spirit that's in you, then I can be incubated and I can grow into the prophet of Elohim like you are, but I need you to give me that part. And he says, well, if you're with me, so you got to stay close. Discipleship does not work if you're not close. Parenting doesn't work good if you're not close. Expecting a harvest from the ground doesn't work unless you get in there and do it. The very nature of this whole seed thing is that it has to be put in, covered, watched over, etc. Or else the likelihood of that fruit coming after its kind is lower. Do you know how many seeds get kicked out there and they just never turn to anything? So back to where it was in 10, he says, if you see me when I'm taken from you, it's yours. But if not, it's not. And it came to be as they continued on and spoke that, see, the chariot of fire with horses of fire which separated the two of them. And Eliyahu went up by a whirlwind into the heavens, and that's what leads us to verse 12 that says, Elisha saw it, he cried out, my father, I should have underlined those verses because this word father is going to come up over and again in the message. And so I've already read it, but he says to him, hey, I hung out with you. I stuck in there. Where's that thing that I was asking you for? Excuse me. I guess I should have kept the other table. It is what it is. Don't worry about being professional later. We're just going to do it right. Hallelujah. So in verse 16 through 19 of Numbers, it says that Yahuwah, the Elohim of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the congregation. I guess I should set this up. This is Moshe and Yahushua, or Yahushua ben Nun, in the desert, and Yahuwah told Moshe already. What did he tell him, Eliana? He was going to come up to the mountain and die. He says, it's done for you. You kind of blew it. You're not going to make it. And so Moshe says, appoint a man over the congregation who goes out before them and comes in before them, who leads them out and brings them in, so that the congregation of Yahuwah be not like sheep without a shepherd. Now, who is Moshe? Moshe is the shepherd of Israel, in effect. And he's looking for the Father to bring forth somebody to sit in that seat. Sound familiar? Rinse and repeat. It's the same kind of concept. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, take Yahushua, son of Nun, with you, a man in whom is Haruah, and you shall lay your hand on him and shall set him before Eleazar, the priest, and before all the congregation, and give him command before their eyes. What you don't see so clearly is that he told Moshe basically to speak over him. Words are so powerful, it's ridiculous. He told him to speak over him and give him command before everybody's eyes. And shall put, and I guess that should be I, and shall put some of your esteem or your honor or your heavy weightiness upon him, so that all the congregation of Israel obey him. And he is to stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire before Yahuwah for him by the right ruling of the Urim. At his word they shall go out, at his word they shall come in, both he and all the children of Israel with him. And the congregation and Moshe did as Yahuwah commanded him, and took Yahusha and set, I know it says Yehoshua, so I say Yahusha for a reason, catch me later, and set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation, and laid his hands on him and commissioned him as Yahuwah commanded by the hand of Moshe. And so again, we have this sort of expanded view of seating. This time it seems like like in Eliyahu and Elisha's position, it seems like there's a spiritual thing going on. So seeds aren't just limited to natural, physical things, but even in the spirit there's something. Remember I said at the beginning, everything. I capitalized it because it was that important. Everything. And so the word for seed, Ishak, can you get something off the printer for me? The word for seed in Hebrew is zerah. And it means seed or sowing or offspring or it's the act of sowing as well. So in other words, to seed the earth is sort of an action word. So that's zerah as well, and that's this word means all of that. I think you already knew that based on what we said, but I wanted to put the definition up there. And so I subtitled this part, Fruit After Whose Kind, because I want us to understand something here. So in your life, after whose kind, whose seed is operating in your life? I don't want to over or understate this, but the fact that I'm reading this to you all and giving you all what it is that I see in the midst of it. In some way, I'm putting seed in your life. I don't want to overstate it, because I'm not the rabbi, I'm not the big important guy. But the fact of the matter is that everyone who's ever taught you anything, with anybody who's ever spoken over you, good or bad, they whether they knew it or didn't, they've had this impact on you. And that impact could be good or that impact could be evil. people are struggling with things in their heads, in their lives, because somebody taught them something, either by action or by word, that causes that seed, that negative seed, to want to prosper. Because remember, everything, spirit or natural, wants to live. And so now we've got this negative in our sight seed that's trying its best to prosper in my life. It's like, well, hold up. I got this garden, and in this garden, the only seed I'm caring about is not you, but yet you somehow infiltrated it. So in our lives, we have to consider what kind of fruit is trying to come forth in the lives of our children. This idea of honoring your father, I emphasize father for a reason, and your mother, and what is planted in us. I think I covered all that, what I just said. And who or what does this apply to? It applies to messengers or angels or devils and demons. It applies to governments. It applies to teachers. It applies to emotions. I'll give you a quick example and even tell you how this message came to be. I was over at HOI one week, I guess about a month ago, and somebody asked a question about dealing with harsh people and this, that, and the other. And how Ruach spoke to me so clear that mean people are being used by the enemy trying to make you mean. One of my favorite ones is anti-favorite one, is rejection. Because if a person harbors a seed or a spirit of rejection, guess what they do? They make you not want to deal with them. Their efforts, their actions almost seem to force you to reject them. And then you feel rejected yourself. Whoa, it just brought forth fruit after its kind. So you're trying to be good and set apart and help out and et cetera, but they've got a spirit of rejection that's like a tree. And so that tree is like a dandelion. Y'all know the one, the turn white, you blow it and the seeds go everywhere. It's going everywhere. And now some of that seed's trying to take root in you. And you're feeling like, did I do good? Did I do right? And if you don't catch yourself, you're like starting to put dirt around or water a seed of rejection. It's like, no. I don't want that to bring forth fruit. And people who are kind, and set apart, and you're like, man, you didn't have to go out of your way to do that. And this is, well, it's all good. Praise the Most High. What does that do? It causes us to want to do good, encourages us to do good, because kindness will bring forth fruit after its kind as well. Y'all follow me? Mm-hmm. And so even emotions and actions like this are all operating on the same principle. Though they may not be physical in nature, they're still having this impact in the earth. I'm going to tell a flame story. I'm sorry I held off so long. I'm going to tell the story. So I grew up in the inner city, and I grew up in this pretty much segregated inner city. In other words, where we were, there weren't a lot of people who didn't look like us. So there were all brown people, and then there was all them other people somewhere else, right? And Maima bought a house, and she bought it in a neighborhood where there were different kinds of people. There were Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, white people, folk from Ireland, wherever. There was all kind of people, and then there was us. And I remember how some of them people, they didn't know how to deal with us, and we didn't know how to exactly deal with them either. But all praise be to the Most High. My parents didn't teach me to be prejudiced. So I didn't have any issue just because they were this or that, the other. But there was this family. I remember their name. And they used to say to me, you N-word, you black, blah, 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 blah. And they would wear me out. And then over time, guess what I used to say back to them? You white people words. And so their prejudice and their anger had gotten into me. I didn't care if they were white at first. But all of a sudden, I'm saying things back to them. They're winning. It's like, okay, you know, I know how to box because in my neighborhood we fought, right? But I didn't realize that I had to have a defense against people saying words. Because those words were coming, and they were, Eliana said the other day she'd rather have a physical beat down than she'd rather have a word beat down than physical. And I'm like, I don't think you know what you're talking about, because sometimes those words can last with you way after your bruises would have healed. Way after. And I had to go through a process to understand that that was about them people. That wasn't about me. And yeah, you know, this is a general statement in brown communities that white people this, white people that, and they deserve some of it. Don't get me wrong. But not every one of them. But at that point, I was like, I'm gonna get me some pink flesh, because you know. So just an example of how somebody can, without your knowing, and because you weren't conscious enough, that you agreed with accepting the seed, and now this thing has become a part of you, and you never wanted it in the first place. So I say governance, teachers, emotions, people, could go on. So Yahushua said in the Bechadashah, Matthew chapter 23, he says, but you, do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, the Messiah, and you are all brothers. So I look at all y'all, I'm thinking, you know, all my brothers and my sisters. Hallelujah. And do not call anyone on earth your father, for one is your father, he who is in the heavens. And people stumble on this underlying part. Don't call anybody your father. Do you think he was saying don't call your natural father your father? That's not what he was saying. So we missed the part in Elijah and Elisha, because Elisha cried out to him. Well, I think I read it. He says, my father. Because he was honoring him as this seed giver. So hang in here with me, because we need to make sure we get this right. So the word rabbi, you know, people say it means great one. There's a concept that I don't know if y'all familiar with, like word pictures, and what it does is it takes the Hebrew back to the times where it looked like this, or even before, when it looked like characters and figures, the Paleo, Proto-Canaanite type language, and so those pictures say something like for instance, the letter Hey is this guy with his arms up like this, and you often see, you know, it's like a circle, and his hands are out like this, and his legs are down like that. Well, if you were driving down the street, and I was standing on the side of the street doing like this, would I draw your attention? Well, guess what Hey means? It means revealed. It means to see. It means like I want to show you. It's like, hey! I mean, it just so happens it matches English. Maybe it's not an accident, I don't know. But the reason I say this is because when I take those letters for rabbi, the R or the resh, it means head. And ABBI or ABI is Abi, father. It's head father. And so Mashiach can say, don't call anybody your head father. Only one is your father, he who's in the heavens. So that's what he's saying. He's not talking about dishonoring your father that he told you to honor back in Exodus chapter 20. That would make no sense. Boy, when the time comes when people let the scripture like kind of talk for itself and not come up with these crazy doctrines, that would be awesome. So he's not telling us to, well, disobey that you know, that one that was gonna give you long life. Forget about that. Don't honor your father. No, he was saying there's nobody who's your head father except for one, because people were saying that their rabbi was like Elohim. He could tell them to do anything and they would just do it, like Elohim had spoken it. And this is how you gave place to traditions that some linger today, because the rabbi said it. Another parable he put forth in Matthew chapter 13, he put forth before them saying, the rain of the heavens has become like a man who sowed good seed in his field, but while men slept, his enemy came and sowed darnel among the wheat and went away. And when the blade sprouted and bore fruit, then the darnel also appeared. So, for you all who are not familiar with this bearded darnel, it's a plant that in its infancy looks a lot like a stalk of wheat, but it's actually poisonous. Make you sick. I don't know if it'll kill you, but it'll make you sick. You have to eat a lot of it. And so while they're little, they look just alike. When it grows up, it gets this little fur underneath it. They call it the bearded darnel, and it distinguishes itself. And it's like, well, hold up. I grew up with such and such and such and such, but man, when he got older, that bearded part came up, and he was a evil man. Anybody ever grew up with somebody who's a criminal and a crook now? Mm-hmm. Maybe not y'all, but I did. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like we were all having fun, and now they're criminals and crooks. So he says, while men slept. Remember what I said earlier about I want to raise our consciousness, because we can't afford to sleep on the access of these seeds that are moving about in the earth and trying their best to get onto us and our people. And the servants, it's all going on, and the servants of the master of the house came to him and said, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? From where then does it have the darnel? And he said to them, an enemy did this. And the servant said to him, do you wish then that we should go and gather them up? But he said, no. That's why you gather up the darnel, you also uproot the wheat with them. And I'm not much of a farmer, but I think I understand what he's saying. And certainly I understand what he's saying when he says, the enemy did it. I mean, sometimes we can look at our children or our friends and it's like, I didn't teach you that. That's not how your parents raised you. What happened? Some darnel got in there somehow. I mean, I want us to see it that way. I want us to understand that these seeds, and we have to guard ourselves against them, because there's this cat out there, and he's got this bag of seed, and he's just cut it open and walking around, hoping that it land on whoever it'll land on. Let both grow together into the harvest, and at the time of harvest I shall say to the reapers, first gather the darnel and bind them in bundles and burn them, but gather the wheat into my granary. Hallelujah. So in Proverbs 19, it says, laziness makes one fall into a deep sleep, and idle being suffers hunger. And so I think that that's one of those passages that says you got to go sow some stuff if you want to reap. But it also says that if you're asleep, you don't know what's going on, kind of tying into the previous passages. And I say to you in Matthew 12, that for every idle word men speak, they shall give an account of it in the day of judgment. So I don't know how you all understand this concept of idle words, but they're words that don't bring forth good fruit. On one of the feast days, I think it's Yom Kippur, there's a command in the prophet's description where we not speak our own words. And so, you know, while there may be some debate about exactly what that means, the fact that the prophet's picking on words, and the Mashiach is saying every idle word you're going to have to give an account for, gives us a cause to remember what it says in James. It's like our tongue needs to be ruled. You know, I remember back in the day, before I even knew Mashiach, this young lady I knew, she was saying that her parents would call them stupid, dumb, stuff like that. And you know, if you start that early enough and do it the right, wrong way, you can find that you create stupid and dumb children. Because your words are having an impact. Words are spirit, and they're just like Yahuwah. When he made the heavens and the earth, he started to say something and it started to manifest. And so we have to really watch ourselves there. So fruit after whose kind? So remember that we are made from the earth. So way back in the beginning there, when I read out of Bereshit chapter 1, verse 11 and 12, I think it was, and it says he's going to bring forth fruit after his kind in the earth. Well, remember, what did he make people out of? Adam and Kawa took the earth. And it was seeded by Yahuwah, and his word / breath is what brought forth the seed. And one of my favorite slogans these days is powered by Haruach. I tell these showers I'll put that on a t-shirt. Powered by Haruach. Yahusha said, now everybody on YouTube gonna do it before me because I ain't got time. But it's okay. It's all good. You don't have to send me no shekels about it. Yahusha answered, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and of the Spirit. So I'm gonna go back for a minute. So it says in Bereshit that he breathed into Adam. Now go forward. And no, I gotta go back again. And so after Adam and Hawa were kicked out of the garden, that method of creating people, it stopped. Yahuwah didn't take some more dirt and breathe into it and create another a group of people. He stopped that. And this other process kicked in, which was procreation by the seed. But Mashiach comes along and says to Nicodemus in John chapter 3, he says, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of the water and the Spirit, he's unable to enter the kingdom of Elohim. That which is born of the flesh is flesh. In other words, that cycle of life that's been happening, that's flesh. And that which is born of Haruach is spirit. Do not marvel that I said to you, you have to be born from above. And so what Messiah is really talking about here is that somehow the seed of Elohim has to be in us. But we'll discover it a little bit more clearly later. And this, in 2 Corinthians 9, he who sows sparingly shall also reap sparingly, and he who sows on blessing shall also reap on blessings. Do not be led astray, Elohim is not mocked, for whatever man sows, that he shall also reap, in Galatians. In the next verse it says, because he who sows to his own flesh shall reap corruption from the flesh, but he who sows to the Spirit shall reap everlasting life from the Spirit. So I want to talk a little bit about this idea of reaping and sowing. And some have heard me say this before, but here's my point. Some of us have led like good set apart lives from the get-go. And we've been sowing good seed. And we got the expectation that good crops come from it, that fruit after its kind come up. But then there's some of us who've been leading kind of crooked, crazy, non-Yahuwah-like lives for a long time. And then we come to the knowledge. And then we got that John chapter 3 sort of deal where we were quote unquote born again. Maybe I'll teach a lesson about that one day. But we had all this seed we've been throwing out. I remember praying. I was like, Father, can I get a crop failure? Because I know the junk that I did, man. Maybe that's what he was doing. He was dealing with the stuff I did. My whole point is that you have to, even though you're dealing with crops that you don't want the harvest from, you have to still keep planting good ones. Because just as surely as you're reaping from those bad errors, those mistakes, those willful rebellions, whatever they are, you start doing good, then that crop is going to come too. But you got to be patient. You got to hang in there. And you got to be sure that you believe what the Father says, because even according to what he showed to Shaul, Yahuwah is not mocked. Whatever you sow, you don't say good or bad. Whatever you sow, you're going to reap. In John chapter 1, it says something that I want us to really think on and maybe even go back to after this lesson is over. See what love the Father has given us, that we should be called the children of Elohim. For this reason, the world does not know us, because it did not know him. Beloved ones, we are now. Every now and then, you'd be surprised what you remember. Anybody remember a song from when they were like 10? Not your 10-year-olds, y'all. But the reason I just said what I said is because I remember the King James version in my head, and it goes into autopilot sometimes. But I'm reading from the Scriptures version, so I'm going to try to read it what it says. Beloved ones, now we are children of Elohim. Now we are children of Elohim. Now we are children of Elohim. And it has not yet been revealed what we shall be, but we know that when he is revealed, we shall be like him. I know everybody's read this before, right? But think about that for a minute. When we finally get to see, understand, when he's revealed, when that traffic sign is up saying Elohim is here, it says that we are going to be like him. So even right now, his seed is in us, but it's gestating and by faith having its work in us. We shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is, and everyone having this expectation in him cleanses himself as he is clean. So remember my picture of this garden, this field. And so sometimes you got to go and you got to pluck out the weeds. You know, Mashiach said to Daniel, be careful, because you're going to uproot the wheat. But we have to do the best we can to wash and purge ourselves, which is what the King James Version says here. Purge ourselves from these thoughts and these systems and these what they call them, transgressions and another word, traditions that are getting in the way, trying to squeeze out the seed of Elohim himself. Trying to mimic it and look like it's him. You know, it's like, yeah, it's about this when it's really about that. And it's because we learned it and somebody kept saying it to us. And everyone having this expectation in him cleanses himself as he is clean. Everyone doing sin does lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. And you know that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him there is no sin. Everyone staying in him does not sin. Everyone sinning has neither seen him nor known him. I'm going to pause right there, because there's a challenge I had when I first read these passages. It's like, well, hold up. So is this saying that I break the law, that I just don't know him? Again, one of those times when you have to slow down, because if you read that, then that means that you're walking in sort of a superstition and not in the real relation with the Most High. What do I mean by superstition? Y'all remember step on a crack, some another? Y'all remember that kind of stuff? Nobody would ever make it in the kingdom if this means what it sounds like it means. So you have to dig a little bit deeper, and you come to realize that we're talking about, let's use the seed parable. We're talking about, I planted broccoli in this field. And so if the harvest came to be oranges, then that's saying that this farmer, Elohim, never went over there. You don't know him, and you haven't had any interaction with him. But if there's some weeds in the broccoli field, it's still broccoli. And going back to the verses before, this purging, this cleansing of ourselves, this purifying of ourselves, we're not changing our what we are because we slip. So I grew up in the North. I often tell this story when it comes to this kind of passage. I grew up in the North, and I remember when we walked to school, and how sometimes in the winter there'd be ice and snow packed on top of each other, and when you're kind of young and little, right, you go, you slide, you fall, and you hit your boom boom on the ice. But over time, you learn how to walk on ice. And so now, you know, I'm going to school, I'm playing with Darnell, he's throwing snowballs at me, and we're still able to keep our balance on ice. But every now and then, you hit something that was wet, or you twist the wrong way, and you fall and you hit the ground, and you get back up and you keep moving. That is the kind of sin a saint should do, where he slips every now and then. But this is talking about living a life of sin. This is talking about my intention is not to please Elohim. I'm not practicing walking on that ice. I just keep falling and keep falling and keep falling and keep falling because I don't care. That's what this is talking about. It's not talking about, have you ever slipped on the ice? Because, I mean, come on, if your buddy said to you, man, you fell on the ice. It's like, man, if you fell on the ice every day, they'd think something was wrong if you were a certain age. And that's what this is talking about. If you sinned all the time, something's wrong. Have you really met the Father? I hope that makes some sense. Amen. Little children, let no one lead you astray. The one doing righteousness is righteous, even as he is righteous. The one doing sin is of the devil, because the devil was sin from the beginning. For this purpose, the Son of Elohim was manifested to destroy the works of the devil. Everyone having been born of Elohim does not sin. Again, my analogy a minute ago should be applied here, because his seed stays in him. His seed stays in him. His seed stays in him. And he's powerless to sin. In other words, somehow the seed of Elohim is pushing out that faultiness. It's given us the expertise, it's given us the power to do all things that are right. He says he gave us everything we needed for godliness. And so this is what his seed is doing in us, even Haruach, because he's been born of Elohim. The children of Elohim and the children of the devil will manifest. Everyone not doing righteousness is not from or of Elohim, neither the one not loving his brother. You ever had a brother or sister that's hard to love? Kind of like a porcupine. How you gonna hug a porcupine? You're gonna get hurt. So before external influences start, we really look to our parents. I mean, I don't know if y'all, but I kind of want it to be a piece of me at least, like my dad. Truth of the matter is I couldn't help but be like him, because why? His seed is in me, right? Mm-hmm. But you know, you think about children, they kind of look to their parents, and this is why parents should honor the word, because if they're looking to us, then there's this connection they're going to get to him, because they're built to kind of look to us, even though when they get older, they kind of say stuff, you know, I never want to be like you or whatever, but in whole, they can't help but be like us. They can't help but be nurtured in the seeds and what we've given them. So in Deuteronomy chapter 6 is where it says for us to, we have to look at it. Deuteronomy chapter 6. I just want to read a few passages out of it. I'm going to start in verse 1. It says, and this is the command, the laws and right ruling which Yahuwah your Elohim has commanded to teach you to do in the land which you are passing over to possess. You know, just because we're not in the land doesn't mean that we should neglect this. So hang in here with me. So that you fear Yahuwah your Elohim, to guard all his laws and his command which I command you, you and your son and your grandson, all the days of your life, and that your days be prolonged. And you shall hear, O Israel, and shall guard to do that it might be well with you, and that you increase greatly as Yahuwah Elohim of your fathers has spoken to you in the land flowing with milk and honey. Verse 4 says, Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah Elohim, Yahuwah is one, and you shall love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And so I could break down what people call the Shema another day, but it's very clear to see that seeding is what the Most High is commanding us to do to our children. He's saying, if you guard the commands and you impress them upon your children, then you just did that rinse and repeat. You just caused them to grow up in the admonition and the fear of Yahuwah, which means that there'll always be this set apart seed for him to deal with. Because the earth, the world needs it. So I'm going to give this testimony and I'm going to close it up. And Eliana was way too small to remember this. And I think I've only talked about it one time, but when she was little, I had this thing happen to me. It was like, she was like this little, I mean, holding her like this. And I was looking at her and she was looking at me. And as I was looking at her and she was looking at me, something, I don't like this word magical, something magical happened. I was looking in her eyes and she was looking at my eyes, and I felt like she was looking into the past and I was looking into the future. And it was deep. I mean, it was like Elohim had staged it. And I could like, I can't tell you I could see people or whatever, but somehow he was connecting this otherwise cycle as a line. And she could probably see all the way back to Adam, even though she couldn't know it. And I could see all the way until Mashiach returned. And it was so awesome that it kind of, I mean, I was caught up. And this is the beauty of the seed that brings forth after its kind. See, there are two ways to have a chance at immortality. One way we all know, and that's to, accept the shed blood of the Messiah, Yahushua. But there's another flavor of it that even the earth, even the world gets to participate in a little bit. Because the children and the children's children and the children's children's children are you. Remember what it said in Hebrews, how Levi paid tithes to Melchizedek, and that the greater would bless the lesser. And he says Melchizedek was greater than Levi because Levi paid tithes to Melchizedek. And people are like, well, hold the phone. Levi wasn't alive when Melchizedek was, that picture where Abraham was. But he goes on to say, but Levi was in Abraham at the time. And so this idea of a seed, it is so powerful because you have, on Elohim's purpose, you have no idea where this is going. You don't know if your little one, the little one next door, will be the next something another, be it good or evil. You have no idea. But what you do have is this opportunity to seed them. You have this opportunity to bless them with something other than poison seed, that their chances of falling on the right side of Elohim is greater. Hallelujah. I think that's the last slide and the last thing that I wanted to say. Nobody asked me any questions while I was talking, but you can ask me now if you have any. And if you don't, going once, going twice. Why do you think they always do that 3 times? What's up with it? Going 3 times, okay. Father, we bless you for your word. We bless you for a time together. We bless you for the fellowship that comes after. We thank you for safe travel here and away from here, Abba. We just bless you because you're good. We exalt you because there's none like you. We say, have your way in our midst, Abba. We pray that you would, Father, break down any barriers, that you would show us seeds that were not according to your will in our lives. And if it be possible, Abba, to remove them from us, we pray you would do that. We pray that you would bless us, that our tongue be a blessing, and not like it is in the book of Jacob, where it says that you can get sweet and sour water, or sweet and salty water, but we bring forth sweet water, Abba, and salt only towards our mortal enemy, even the devil. We bless you, Abba, that you've given us power and authority over any and everything that we need to. Help us to remember that as we go through obstacles. Help us to remember that, Abba, when we don't have obstacles, that we always know that you're our Elohim, whether it seems like it's good or it seems like it's bad, that heaven is secure, and so are we in you. Hallelujah. Amen. Hallelujah. All right. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Amen. Amen. So as a bonus, and I'm done, but as a bonus, I noticed that when I went through these passages that the Father showed me, that it changed the way I looked at the word Father in a real way. And I wrote down a bunch of, or typed out a bunch of times when it shows up. And I guess we can talk about it in the fellowship because I don't want to hold you all any longer. But the Father is the seed giver. The parents are the nurturers of life. And it just changed my perspective a little bit. And I kind of knew a lot of this, but it changed my perspective on how to look at fathering and who do we allow to father us. Because, you know, your boss man want to be your daddy. He wants you to do what he said. And he don't really care. If you're in the military, you're sergeant, corporals, generals, whatever, they want you to submit to them, to honor them in a way that sometimes is inordinate. And because they want to replicate their system. The whole world, the TV shows that are out there, we have to be careful because they want to replicate their system in us. So it just kind of changed the way I look at the idea and the word Father when I see it in the scripture. All right.
I got
a question, Aki?
Back to what you were just saying, rabbi and high priest, is it one and the same?
No. See, because you don't find that the Most High says that Aharon and his children would be rabbis. He says that they would be priests. And so it's appropriate to be a priest. Even in the book of Malachi, it says the priest should obtain knowledge. I got that wrong. They should be the ones that hold this deep knowledge of Elohim and minister it to the people. And you should be able to bring your gifts and etc. to them as though you're bringing it to Elohim. So they're like, his intermediary in the earth, and there was no fault with that if they did it righteously. But this concept of rabbi, I don't think I see it in the Tanakh. I don't think it comes about. I think this is a Babylonian captivity move, because that's when the synagogue system and the Pharisees started to prosper. That's when that whole thing happened. There was no such thing. I mean, people say Rabbi Moses or Rab Moses, but Moses is not being called a rabbi in the scriptures. He's been called Moshe. Mm-hmm. Even the passage I just read, he was called a shepherd, right? But he's not called a rabbi. As awesome as the Most High used him, he's not called that. So this concept of a rabbi is a later down the line thing. And just as a sort of history lesson, you find that people try to compensate, and they have good intentions when they come up with some ideas. But if you hold on to that, so I go outside and it's cold as ice. So I put on 3 pairs of socks and long underwear and a hat and a coat and whatever, and to stay warm. That seems like a good idea. But if I do that every day and it's 90 degrees out, that good idea has played itself out. And what people have a hard time with some of these religious concepts is they come up with something trying to preserve the faith, trying to keep the body together because of whatever's going on around. And even after that's gone, they keep doing it. And now they got a tradition that don't seem to make much sense. But that's what we do. That's what we do. And so this idea of a rabbi is non-biblical, because we have one who's our rabbi, even the Father who's in heaven. He's our head. That resh, again, it's a head, man.
A high priest.
It's beyond a high priest.
Okay.
So you heard this sort of Jewish tagging for Yom Teruah. They call it Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh Hashanah.
Right. So that's the head of the year, because the resh is a head. Hashanah is the year. And so it's the head of the year because they're saying that that's when the year starts on one of their calendars. But according to the scripture, the head of the year is in the spring, in the month of Aviv. And so I'm just saying that's resh, whenever you see it in Hebrew, it's head something all the time. Because that's what that letter means. If you look at the picture, it actually looks a little bit like a head. And he's the head. And it ain't never been different. And whoever he uses, he's using, but he's not using them so that you make him into the head, because he's not the head. It's really as simple as that. Hallelujah. All right. No questions. I'm done. Let's figure out what's next. Somebody had another question? Oh, what you got?
What if they don't fall?
What if they, say again?
What if they don't fall in ice?
What if they don't fall?
What if they
in
don't?
ice?
Well, I think that means that they practiced and practiced and practiced until they were able to stand on it. And I think that's really a good question, because what I didn't mention was why all of a sudden, teenagers and grown folk aren't falling on the ice every day. It's because they practice. And so we should be practicing righteousness, because I don't think about it. You got your books, you got this, you're playing, you might have your boom box back in the day. And you can still walk on ice and you're not even thinking about it. A car comes, you slide over to the side, it's not even a second thought. That's how righteousness should be to us. We shouldn't be having to focus on grit our teeth to do right. It should be in us. It should be like normal. And we should practice it enough to where it's first nature. Notice I didn't say second. It should be the thing that comes out of us. We should be surprised when we don't. I lose my temper every now and then. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, it disappoints me. Because I'm not a hot-headed dude anymore. I might have known about that back in the day, but Yahuwah has helped me to come to that place where I'm slow to anger. At least slower. A lot slower. Hallelujah. And so I'm still practicing, and I want to give place to his seed to do that. So thank you for that question, young man. Hallelujah. What you got, Eliana?
Why do people do what other people around them do?
Second?
Why do people do what other people around them do?
I think that community is built in. In other words, everybody wants to feel like they belong. And so people use that to their advantage with commercials on TV, because they tell you, or shows on TV sometimes, the ones you watch, that they say, you gotta have this, that, and the other to fit in. And they're playing on something that the Most High built into us. It is and was so important that community cooperate. So it says in the Torah that we should love Elohim and love our neighbor as ourselves. It goes on further to say, if your enemy's ox falls in the ditch, that you're to help him get it out. And so He my enemy. I'm gonna help him. Anybody in here think, I really want to help my enemies? No, probably not. But the Father plugged that into Torah because it was more important for all of Israel to make it. And this whole getting along and doing the similar things makes us all acceptable to each other. That's why sometimes people look at me strange when they see me with my turban, because they don't have them yet. When we go out and people like, hey, God, I'm like, I can show you how to cut a video, man. No problem. but they want you to fit in. That's why sometimes people become prejudiced, because they're used to seeing people who look like this, and they see some new kind of people, and they're like, I don't know what to do with that. But it's important for folk to feel like they're a part of something. For us, we should all want to feel like we're a part of the kingdom of Elohim. And since you can't see it with your natural eyes, that's a little bit of a challenge, and that's where us as parents come in at. Let's try to translate that to the little ones until they get their own version of it. Hallelujah. Good question. All right. Going once and twice and again. All right. Hallelujah. I'm done.